Welcome, Jim. This is
Thank
our,
you. Good to see you.
likewise, this is our first episode of my BCC, in which members of BCC can introduce themselves a little bit to the larger community. And my name is Cantor Juval, and I'm the Cantor, and I'm so delighted to have you on this first episode, Jim.
Well, thank you.
How are you doing?
Well, that's the question these days. Michelle and I are fine. My sister-in-law, Michelle's sister, is here staying with us. We're all fine ourselves, but it's a very scary time, and every day is more disturbing between the disease and the terrible authoritarian behavior that's coming out of Washington.
Mm-hmm.
But so the answer is mixed. How we are
Mixed. I can definitely identify. So in this time of mixed emotions, what has been a source of comfort and or stability for you at this time of quarantine or uncertainty?
Well, that's a complicated question.
We take complicated answers too.
Okay. Oh, good. A few things. We're lucky to have each other, Michelle and I, and Michelle's sister is here, and that is affirming, and we appreciate that. I think it's been important for me to be able to get outdoors, to take walks, to be in the backyard. When so much of the world feels abnormal, I mean, this is more about the disease, being able to have the regular just experience of being in a nice place and being able to be in the garden is important. I'll say something else that has been affirming, and it certainly has to do with BCC, and that is I've gone to 2 memorial services by Zoom during the lockdown, as well as any number of other services, and seeing people get together and come together in that sort of virtual space somehow is very positive. I mean, it's not quite the togetherness of being next to each other, but on the other hand, you can all face each other during it and see people's faces, and that's very nice. Part of how Michelle has responded to this is she's been gardening up a storm. We have quite a large backyard, and there are little vegetable patches all over the place, and the roses are in bloom, and that's been really nice. In terms of the response to the demonstrations after the murder in Minneapolis, nothing has been affirming. I mean, the kind of crackdown, the police state tactics, the attacks on journalists, here in LA, the really hardcore enforcement of the curfew. That's all. It's all terrifying, and knowing that there are lots of people disturbed by it is a bit of help, but only a bit.
Maybe affirmed is a little exaggerated, but certainly calmed or comforted is a word I would use when I hear the things that you mentioned, like coming together in community via this platform and just being able to be more in touch. And, as a service leader, not just seeing each congregant's face, but also seeing them worship has been so new and sweet and humbling and to me, because it's a very intimate act, very, very intimate. And usually you see the congregation from afar, but now you just really see their face and their expression as they concentrate and as they offer their prayer. So it's special, I find, yeah.
Part of being at home is being with the pets, and we have a dog and a cat and a parrot, and today the cat and the dog were curled up together in a chair in my office, and I was going to try and share a picture of that. It's a cliche now that the dogs are happy, we're all home so much more. But it is true, and I do feel like now with 3 of us here all day long, the pets are more drawn in, and the cat is more drawn in, is much more likely to spend the day in the house, and he and curl up next to the dog sleeping on my chair. Michelle here is growing cucumbers and squash and beans, and every day you can see the beans crawling higher up the trellis. It's really fun. And then I think that looks like eggplant over there, and there are tomato plants all over. One of the nice things we have here, we have a nice big tent in the backyard. Here it is. This is our guest bedroom. It's quite, as far as tents go, it's quite nice. Michelle and I lived in the tent for 11 months when we were remodeling. Now Michelle's sister, Dre, is living in there. She's been here since the lockdown began 3 months ago. I forget what these are. They look like squash of some kind, radishes, carrots, and tomatoes are over here. We have one of the things that's nice is we're able to sit outside. I'm an environmental lawyer. I joined both BCC and the California Department of Justice at the same time, about 25 years ago when I moved to Los Angeles. My background, before I went to law school, I was in my early 30s. I'd worked as an environmental scientist for one of the state regulatory agencies whom I still work with. And here's my wife, Michelle, who—
Hello, Michelle. Good to see you.
This is being taped. You're welcome to stay, one of the Meet BCC events that Juval is organizing. I'm nearing retirement. I'll probably retire this year in 2020. I might have retired. I might be retiring right about now, but for COVID-19, it just felt like I wanted things to stabilize a little bit more. But it's wonderful work. I work with a few state agencies, helping them enforce California's environmental laws and punish violators. Also work with them to help negotiate cleanup of contaminated areas. And those tend to be complicated both technically and administratively, because there are tens, if not there are tens, hundreds, sometimes even thousands of responsible parties, and you have to negotiate a cleanup plan with them and get people to work together and reach agreement. And it's interesting work. It's one thinks of lawyers as practicing law as a sort of dry and intellectual, but this part of it is very human. And good lawyering is human, because you work with people, and you need to reach agreement with them, at least. And so that part of it is nice. There's a big part of what our office is doing now is trying to hold back the Trump administration's environmental rollbacks. I've done some of those cases, some dealing with general science policy, but I've also picked up slack from other people who would be working on client things, more local issues, but instead are having to spend their time fighting the Trump administration initiatives.
So this career started as you joined BCC as well?
I graduated from law school in 1993 and got a job clerking for a federal judge in Orange County, and started coming to BCC then. I have a good friend, Beth Epstein, who I knew from Sierra Club hiking, and she came to BCC for high holidays, and I came, and I think probably the first time was in the fall of 1994 was my first high holiday, and was completely taken with Lisa, and made my friend got to be friends with Jeremy Lawrence and some other folks, and then I moved to Los Angeles to start with the Attorney General's office, and coming to BCC. Coincidentally, I came up from Orange County once or twice to go to services. The one time was right after Lisa had been hired. Rabbi Edwards had been hired. She'd been a student rabbi here, and it was a welcoming service. She wasn't beginning quite yet, but she and Tracy were being greeted by the congregation, not introduced, because everybody knew them from when Lisa was a student rabbi there, but it was kind of a welcoming back. And little did I know that what an important part of my life she would be over the next quarter century. There would be.
Being an LGBTQ space founded by and for LGBTQ people, to be themselves, to enter a safe space in which they can bring all of their identities. Is it something that was appealing to you as well?
Yes. So I did, when asked. I'm trying to get the dog to jump on my lap, but she's not cooperating. When asked, I identify as bisexual. I mean, I put it that way because I've been married to a woman for 15 years now, going on, and so that part of is not as central. But it was important to me to go to a GLBT synagogue, and Beth brought me to BCC. As it happened, I also really liked the rabbi. I went every week to Torah study. Jeremy did as well. Some of the other folks were part of it, and got to know Rabbi Edwards. Then I came first because it was GLBT, and that's always stayed important to me. At the High Holy Day services, I was very taken with Lisa and Cantor's soloist emeritus Fran Chalin, who was singing then, and who I'd not met before. And then going to Torah study the next year bonded me with Lisa. My Jeremy Lawrence, who I've mentioned several times, is a very good friend, came every week. There were other people who are still BCC stalwarts who came every week. Robin Berkovitz, Tamara Klein, I think Tara Weinreich. No, Becky actually came occasionally, surprisingly enough. And it was a really steroidal way of feeling connected to the community. I had the kind of intimacy from being in a small discussion where you're inspired by the words of the Torah, but you don't know where it's going to be. And seeing a group of people every week, you get a feeling for their ups and downs. It's a powerful way to become part of a community. I started baking bread about 10 years ago. The part of the reason is Michelle is a wonderful cook, but she would cook dinner every night. And then when we'd go out to friends' house for potlucks, as people do, she'd have to cook then too. And I felt, that somehow seemed unfair that she would have to cook when we ate at home. And then she loves to cook, but still it's a burden. And I had friends, I'll put it this way, other husbands I knew who were bread bakers. And I thought, well, maybe I'll try that. And it's coming up on 10 years ago now. And I liked it right away, and I've continued to do it more. Usually my bread comes out well. People respond positively. I get good compliments on the bread, and it's been a big part of my life. This kitchen is partly designed so Michelle can cook over here, and there's the stove behind, and I can bake bread over here. And the reason I'm putting us through all of this is because I have to work on the bread that I've been baking.
Let's see it.
This is the station, my counter for bread, and there's a separate oven over here. And what I need to do now is bake the bread. It's a while I'm doing this, it's a sourdough bread from natural yeast. I've had the same mother sourdough for about 10 years.
Wow.
It's a simple recipe. I made two bowls. Let me say, when I started to bake bread, I got the cookbook Tartine. Tartine, Chad Robertson has a bakery in the Bay Area. It's the first book that a lot of people use to bake bread. It is horrendously badly written. It's there's a paradox that you read the instructions and they're almost never clear. Yet somehow many people, including me, learn to bake bread from it. So the standard recipe in Tartine starts with a kilogram of flour, and then you make 2 loaves of bread. I did that yesterday. The day before, I refreshed my starter. The basic process is the same. I recommend for bakers, sourdough bakers in particular, before you add the yeast, figure out the amount of water and flour you're going to use, and mix them together and let them sit together for anywhere from half an hour to several hours. It's a well-known technique. It's called auto-leasing. It was invented by somebody in France, Raymond Cavell, but I find it works very well. So I did that last night. I mixed a kilo of flour. I think it was 850 grams of whole wheat flour, and 150 grams of rye just for flavor, additional flavor, and added the water and let that sit for an hour or two, and then I added the starter. I had 200 grams of fresh starter.
And that's what you mean when you say yeast? You mean the starter? to add.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, there's yeast on wheat particles, and if you mix flour and water and let it sit for a while, eventually it'll start to ferment.
Right.
So this is the starter. I always have something like this in the refrigerator.
And has it been in this container, in this vessel for 10 years as well?
No. In fact, I broke the vessel I had it in just the other day, and happily I had other of it. But you know, I keep refreshing it and added that 200 grams. So if I were going to start a new baking cycle now, say to bake challah tomorrow, which I'm not going to do, although I have the last few weeks, I would take, oh good, and you make gorgeous challah. You can bake challah with sourdough or natural leaven rather than commercial yeast. I would take maybe half of this and mix it with 200 grams. I would do that now or later tonight. 200 grams of water, 200 grams of flour, and then by the morning it would be really bubbly, and it would be my yeast. To start it, you mix flour and water, let it sit when you're making a starter for the first time, and so now because I'm going to put this. Oh, I just lost a loaf of bread. But just let me say what I'm doing. I'm going to put this in the oven, and I put cornmeal on the bottom so it won't stick to the pan. Like many people, I bake. I use these cast iron pans. These are Dutch ovens. This is very hot, and it's meant to be used like this. The bottom part is a big pot. Yeah. But what folks do, including me, is they use it upside down. This is the top of the Dutch oven, and I'm going to put the bread in there. I have this to slash it. And one place where things go wrong baking bread is getting the bread in from in here in the banneton into that. This is a big, wet, puffy loaf. So if it's a harder loaf, if it's not as wet, I would just turn it over and put it in my hand. But I think that this is going to be too gooey to do that. So instead, I'm going to turn the pan upside down onto this. I see. Turn it right side up and hope for the best. We all do. Probably it will stick a little bit to the banneton, but maybe not. Yeah, now I can feel that it's sticking. So just sort of shake it a little bit to get it to unstick. The other thing with this dough is I put in a lot of buckwheat. I put in too much buckwheat. So not too bad, the sticking. And so that's what it looks like. Yeah. And then I'll make some cross hatches here for it to rise. Go back to the oven, take the top, and put this on like this, upside down. Yeah. And put them in the oven together. Yeah. And bake it. I bake it 450, but I set to preheat. I set the oven to 475. So now I'll lower it to 450. Well, thank you for sharing from your home and your love of baking and also, you know, for actually gifting other people with your creation. Was there anything more that maybe you wanted to share? Members of BCC, or maybe those who are watching who don't maybe have visited? BCC is a wonderful community. I mean, here now, you've been my cantor for 10 years. I'm never quite comfortable with calling a community a family, because it's, you know, it's not. But to have, you know, seeing familiar, your friends, so many come together, there is a sense of coming home, and that, you know, I'm grateful for that sense of home, and for the many friends I've made there. It's an exciting time at BCC. I mean, Lisa has retired. We had a year with an interim rabbi, so we could begin to focus. Rabbi Allison. It's been an extraordinary year between COVID-19 and now the devastation of society. But we've hired a new rabbi who seems wonderful. It's been really moving to see people step up.
I've just attended a webinar on how the high holidays might look like. And one of the comments was to, rather than try and apply the exact same model of the holidays that we usually do when we are at Temple Isaiah, to the Zoom platform, to think about what our exclamation points might be for a service, and focus on that within an hour, and choose our readings and music to be in alignment with that theme. And one thing that I heard you say is that sense of togetherness and the sense of home, and how it can look like when that physical space is not available at this time. It's been really helpful for me, and interestingly also for me, just seeing all of my colleagues all serving different congregations, but all in this with the same goal of wanting to serve and provide comfort and courage to all those who are at home, also made me feel so energized and soothed at the same time. While, you know, we're all in this together is a little problematic to me, this expression, I think what does come out at this time is how much of our needs are shared, and how much, like, we all need to be connected. We all thrive in relating to others who know our lives and whose lives we know. And so I think this has become a very, very important reminder under these extraordinary and sometimes very hard circumstances. Thank you again, Jim. And
thank you, Yuval. This has been fun to talk to you.